Hey y'all, I'm Krista, and this is my channel, Real Talk and Redemption. Have you ever been looking at your spouse and you see them physically there, but yet they're not there? Like there's a complete disconnect. You're like, you there, but are you really? That type of thing. Well, I've experienced exactly that. When my brother in law was killed many years ago, I often say that that was the day that I lost two people. I physically lost my brother in law that day, and that was also the day that I lost my husband too. I felt like he died, even though he was still physically here with me. But I felt like he became a shell of a person, that there was a void, and that the person that I had once knew, the man that I had married, was no longer alive. He was gone, he disappeared, and he had checked out. And I didn't know if I would ever be able to reach him again. I didn't even know if it was possible. So maybe your story isn't the same as mine, to where there was some major death in the family. It could be something as simple, not I won't say simple, but something as a loss of a job, bankruptcy, just years of lifing piling up, and burnout creeping in, that has caused your spouse to mentally and emotionally, even physically, check out of the relationship. And no matter what the reason is, the feeling is still the same when you're looking at the person that you love and yet you don't see them anymore, like they're gone. So it doesn't make a difference of what caused them to get to that place. It all still feels the same, which is pretty horrible, miserable, lonely, and it's a very hard place to be in. When your spouse starts pulling away, you start noticing little signs of them pulling out of the conversation. They're losing their temper, flying off the handle over some of the smallest things that wouldn't have normally bothered them. They are kind of like caving into themselves, becoming a shell of a person, isolating themselves, or maybe just removing themselves from the house and not being involved in things that they once used to do and things of that sort. And that can be a hard reality for you as well. But have you ever just been looking across the room at them and then you're like, who are you? Like, I physically see you here, but who are you? Like, I don't even recognize you anymore. The person that I know wouldn't show up like this. And if that is you, it's a very scary place to be in, when the person that you love is checked out and they are nowhere to be found. And it can seem very frightening, but I just want you just to take a second and to breathe and to know that you're not in this alone, that there are so many of us that have been in that exact same position. And even though it's a very lonely and very hard place to be in, there is a way out and a way through all of this. Okay, so let me give you some practical things that you can do while you're going through this. Because despite the fact that your spouse has checked out right now, you still have to keep doing life. Has not stopped because your spouse is emotionally or mentally checked out of the relationship right now, or checked out from himself. Whether that's kids or work or whatever it is that you have to deal with, you still have to show up. And here are some practical tips that you can do during that time frame. And one of the things that I will say is, don't be in denial. Recognize the signs. Often when you start seeing the changes, sometimes we start trying to justify them, like, am I tripping? Okay, I'm being too extra emotional. No, it could just be this, it could just be that. But the truth is that when your spouse is changing, when they're checking out. So don't try to convince yourself that you're not seeing what you're seeing. You know what you know. Use your discernment, use that intuition, trust it, and recognize it, so that way you can face the issues head on. The next thing I would say is, don't take on all the blame. For whatever reason, most of us women we take on blame that doesn't belong to us. Like, well, if I would have said this, or maybe if I would have been doing this, or if I would have recognized it sooner, or if I've this and this, the shoulda, coulda, would have. Don't do that to yourself. Don't place this blame on yourself. This doesn't mean that necessarily your husband's to blame. Sometimes life has happened and they didn't know how to handle it, and this is the result of it. But it's not your place to blame yourself, and that's not going to improve the situation. So don't even spend time in that space. Just let that all go. Uh, and next, I would say, and the things that I'm saying are in no particular order. You should apply them in any order that actually is applicable to you, that feels right. Is to make sure that you're continuing to pray and to creating space for God. Invite Him into the equation. Invite Him in to the space to allow him to help you get through this journey, and let him show you how to show up for your husband. And then also that he is the one that's going to be able to reach your husband in ways that you can't. So invite him into the space to help him, to allow God to fill in the gaps where you can't reach your husband. In the process of when you're going through this and you see that your spouse is disconnected from you and from the family and everything, women, sometimes we have a tendency to overcompensate. If he's not spending as much time with the children or other family members, or doing things that he used to do around the house and stuff like that, we start trying to overcompensate and fill those spaces and fill those voids and stuff like that. And there may be times in certain situations you have to, but make sure that you're not overdoing it and that you are filling your own cup. You may say, I just don't have time. There's no space in the world in these 24 hours where I have time to fill my own cup. Well, the truth is that there are at least 5 minutes somewhere you can squeeze 5 minutes in, whether that's going to bed 5 minutes early, that's taking 5 minutes longer in the bathtub or the shower, journaling, putting on some jams and having a 5 minute jam session to one of your favorite songs, or putting on something that you watch that makes you laugh, like that belly laugh, whether it's a movie or an old sitcom, Living Single, or I Love Lucy, or whatever it is that gives you that laugh. Find 5 minutes to read a book that, if that's what you enjoy doing, drawing, coloring, something like that. Make sure you're spending time filling your own cup, because you can't be of any real value to anyone else if you are just, all you're doing is emptying out your cup and nothing's getting put back into it. And another thing is, when you're going through this, is sometimes you find yourself being so angry, sometimes getting a little bitter, that you want to kind of give your spouse the silent treatment because of the pain and the hurt that you're feeling by the way that they've checked out on you. I say keep the lines of communication open with them. You may want to change how you communicate, maybe a little bit softer, a little gentler, but make sure you're still keeping those lines of communication to them, letting them know occasionally how you're feeling, that you still love them, that you're here for them, and that, you are trying to show up for them in however they need, and then move on. And last but not least, I will definitely say this is pretty important, is avoid isolation. We have a tendency to, when we're going through times, is to retreat and hide. We take on shame that doesn't belong to us. We take on blame and shame that doesn't belong to us. Let's get rid of that. That's got to stop. But don't isolate yourself. Make sure that you are checking in with people that you trust, letting them know how you're really doing. If you need to speak with a counselor, your pastor, check in with these people. They want to be there for you and help them, but you need to also invite them in, let them know that you're struggling. But they will help you through. They'll be those, they can fill in the gaps for you sometimes when you can't even do things for yourself. So take those opportunities to utilize them and to share with them, and don't isolate yourself, because that's where the enemy tries to get in and it feeds you, has you focusing on all of the negative feelings that you're feeling, and he highlights and intensifies those when there's still so many things that you can still celebrate when you're going through these hard times. For those of you that have ever felt like an experience when when your spouse is emotionally checked out, or mentally checked out, how did you deal with it? Is there any practical tips that you utilized each day or weekly or monthly or something that helped you get through those times? I would love for you to share those. I would love to see what worked for you. Hopefully I don't ever go through that again, but if should, I would love to hear how you got through it and what worked for you. And then other viewers here, and maybe benefit from your story as well. So feel free to share that so others can learn on how to help someone or help themselves during those hard times when their spouse is emotionally and mentally checked out of the relationship for whatever reason. All right. And for those of you who are in that season right now where you're dealing with a spouse that is emotionally or mentally checked out, what I say to you is to keep showing up, keep praying, keep trusting God to show up and show out for you, because He will. And breathe and know that you're not in this alone, and that there's someone out there for you. Feel free to reach out if you just need a little bit of extra support. In the meantime, thank you all for listening, and I'll see you all soon.